Hi everybody, Rachel here from Rachthestamper.com, and I have been meaning to use this stamp set. I actually didn't really get this for the images. I really got it for the words because there are really a lot of nice sentiments in this, especially thanks so much. The really good thing about you is you bring out the good in me. I thought it had a lot of really nice positive sentiments in it, so I got it for that reason. However, I recently saw a really cool idea that I wanted to share with you, actually two, so I figured I'll show you them in a two-part series. So this first one, what we're going to do is we're going to stamp the bride. This is actually a card that I did see in the catalog, but maybe you might have missed it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out the bride, and this is a really easy way to make this very pretty with minimal effort if you're afraid that this is too much. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this onto a block. Okay, you will need either one of two things. So you can either use, I believe this is basic gray, so we don't want that. You can either use your black Stampin' Right marker, or if you have some sort of another permanent marker, this one is a Pilot envelope addressing pen. This is a non-removable pen, so you cannot get this off. So you definitely want to make sure you take your time if you use this. So you're going to need those two items for it. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Let me just grab my... We'll do this one part first, that way we can let this dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and ink her up. And I'm going to use, oh, so sorry about that. We're going to use Memento. And I'm going to just really stamp the top of her. And the reason I want to use Memento is because I want to use an alcohol marker. So we're just kind of stamping the top of her. Now, if you want to use something different, you can use a different marker. So I'm just going to set this on the side. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead. Now, you can, at this point, if you wanted to switch inks, you could. But I'm going to stamp just the bottom. So I'm more so interested in the dress portion. Not even really the flowers, just the dress. And then what I'm going to do is, I have a piece of Designer Series paper, so they used one with the flowers on it, but I did find a couple other choices that would be really cute. This is actually from the Bird Ballad DSP, so you could use this pink if you wanted to. I do think that the flowers were really pretty because it gave a really cool look to the dress. So I'm going to just stamp this, and then I'll show you what I did. Let me just make sure this bottom is inked really nicely. You could also do this with the Stamparatus if you're afraid you're not going to press hard enough. So you really just want the dress, but you want to be able to give it long enough to go if you want to cut it longer. Okay, so if you can see right here, you have your dress and this comes down. This is, this particular spot might have been a tiny bit busy to use, but we're going to make it work anyway. Then what we're going to do is, again, you can either take your Stampin' Right black marker, and I'm going to say I'm going to use the brush tip just because. And I'm going to just kind of extend this down a little bit. It doesn't have to be too long, and you can kind of bring the folds down a little if you'd like as well. The folds of the dress. Okay. Now if you do it with the envelope addressing pen, this is a much finer tip, which is great. The only thing is if you want something, so this will give you much better detail if you wanted a thinner line, but you're definitely going to need to add a little bit more to your line. So we'll just butt that up there a little bit. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to take our paper snips and I'm going to trim this out. So I'm just going to follow, I'm not interested in her arms or anything, I just want the dress portion, and we can obviously make this as small or as long as we want, just depends on what your card's going to do. So I'm going to make mine a little bit longer. I'm going to take this part out, and same on the side, so I'm going to trim that one part off and just following this dress down like that. So if you look at this part here, so if you match this up, you can trim out this top flower portion. So we're going to just remove that. Just like so. And if you look here, you can also see where her arm is. So we'll go ahead and snip that off. Okay. So then if you just, for sake of looking, if you line this up, that's what it's going to look like. So we can always scoot this over a little bit. It lines up really well. And again, we can let this be as long as we want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and snip this part out. And I'm going to leave this on here just so I kind of have a line of where exactly I'm lining it up. So there is a little bit of fussy cutting involved. You obviously can omit the flowers if you want,
That's kind of up to you. I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to kind of just trim around them a little bit. So this, in case you've never watched me before, this is kind of the way I do my lives. I generally don't pre-do cards. I kind of will come up with an idea and then go with it. So that's what I'm doing here. So that's why I don't have a pre-done card to show you, because I kind of looked in the catalog and thought this would be really neat. And then the other idea I have would be a great card for either a sister, or if you have a really close friend that's like a sister, or just a really close friend that you can, you know, really talk to and tell anything to. I thought this would be a really cool card. So that will be in my second video. And I will do my best here on YouTube to get them to link together. That way, once you watch one, you can just click and watch the other. Okay, so I am kind of trimming a little bit close to her face. And the only reason is I don't want to have a lot of white edging. So I have a pretty close cut card there. And then we're going to just put this part, we're going to fit that in. So what you can also do if you want to just lose this white edge is you can take the brush tip part of your marker. And I do this quite often. And I kind of just trace around to make sure that there's no white spots. What this does is it really helps to give you a lot more of a sense of depth to your card. And then one other thing I do want to tell you is you don't have to do this part specifically. What you can do is, and I'll explain this to you a little bit better later, but what you can do is you can actually stamp her flat onto whatever card you're going to do. And then you can just trim this part out and add it on. So it could be very simple. So it does not have to be that you cut this part out. It's another very simple way to do this. So when we actually put the card together, I will explain that to you a little bit better. So we have these two pieces here. But what I thought about, and I've done this before on cards, I actually did this for my niece's First Communion card, is this is a great flourish. This is the Springtime Impressions. I don't have the stamp set. I only got the dies because I really like the butterfly, but I thought this corner flourish was really cool. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to layer all this onto a piece of thick Whisper White. So this is 4 1/4 by 11, and then you're going to score it at 5 1/2. Then I'm going to take another piece of Whisper White. I am going to go with thick just because I want it to really stand out, and I'm going to cut a piece and lay it on top of this. And then my plan is to put her on here and then to bring this down. Okay, so it's going to kind of go on top. So not 100% sure how much of this we're going to use. I might end up trimming some off, but I'm going to go ahead and run this through the Big Shot. And actually, now that I think about it, just because of having the Designer Series paper, I'm going to just do this one onto a regular piece of Whisper White. So I'm not going to use a thick piece of Whisper White. I'm going to just use a regular sheet. So unfortunately, I do have to trim one down. And again, we do have lots of other papers that you could use. You could use the Bird Ballad, and I'm going to just trim this into a 4 by 5 1/4 because I don't really need the whole sheet. Cool part is if you do this onto a full sheet, so there it'll fit just on there. If you do this onto a full sheet, so if you did it onto one that was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, you can actually flip it and almost get 2 pieces out of one piece of cardstock. So that's pretty nice as well. Just move these over. And I'm going to tell you that when you do this with the Big Shot, just for sake of making sure that everything cuts, because it is a pretty intricate die, I will say I'm going to run it back and forth twice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down, kind of get it lined up the way I want. And you don't really want it to go through squarely, so you don't want a hard angle. You want to kind of turn it to the side. So I'm going to just adjust that just slightly. And I'm going to put this on. And then once I get it lined up, what I usually do to prevent it from moving is I lay it on and then I push it down. So then I'm going to run this through the Big Shot. And again, I am going to go twice. I'm going to go back and forth. So there's 1. And 2. Okay, and typically when you do it that way, especially if your Big Shot is newer, it's much more helpful to do it that way. It will come out really, really simply. So then you have that. So then you can take, if you wanted to use your die brush, you could. I tend to use my paper piercer just because I really like it a lot. So I'll just kind of run some of these through. But if you have the die brush adapter for the take your pick tool, you could use that as well. And I also find that I use this a lot to get out the little pieces. So I'm just going to pop one and pull it out. Because you do want to make sure that when you put your die through, that it's clean, because it cuts much better if it doesn't have little bits of paper stuck in there. So make sure you clean that out when you're done. So I'm going to just give this just a little pressing. And again, with the 2, it usually helps everything to fall out pretty simply. The other thing you could do, if you still have either the Sizzix adhesive strips, sheets I should say, or if you have some other, I know Suk Wang makes a double-sided adhesive paper as well, which is amazing. So what you could do is you could put that onto the back of this panel here. That way when you're finished, and that makes it incredibly easy. You have no idea. That makes it super duper easy. But when you're finished, all you do is you peel off the label, and it actually takes all those little pieces out. So it makes it really simple. So I'll save this little piece here. I can use that for something. And then we'll clean that out when we're finished. And just dump this in the trash real quick. All right, so I am gonna put this on the side, and then like I said, I'm gonna try to keep this clean-ish. We're going to use our full sheet here. So this is already, again, pre-scored. So I'll just make sure that has a nice, nice fold with my bone folder there. So there's that, and then I have this piece that I'm going to layer onto here. Okay, kind of like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just decide where we want this to go. So we could kind of do this like as if she was behind a trellis and this was her gown. That would work out really nicely as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and color her in a little bit. And I'm going to use the Stampin' blends for that. So I do have a little bit of the ivory and the bronze. I tend to use a lot together because I think they look really pretty. And I'm going to use, I believe, since I'm a blonde, I'll make her blonde. So we have some So Saffron. I'm going to go with a little teeny bit of, oh, that was dark. I wanted light crumb cake. Do a little bit of light crumb cake. The ivory will probably do for her skin. And maybe we'll add a little bit of Calypso Coral for the flowers. And maybe a hint. I think that's light Calypso Coral, and then I'll have light Flirty Flamingo. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off first. I'm going to put this up so you can just see the difference. I'm going to start off first with the ivory for the skin. Also, the bronze is a really nice tone if you want to have a darker toned skin for the bride. For a while before I was using this, I was actually using the Petal Pink is a nice one as well. I'm just going to get this over here. This is a little part of the arm here. And then we can also see right here, which kind of makes it nice once you color it in. Also a nice thing to have handy is to actually look at the stamp because you can see exactly what part you want to take off there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with my snips and just remove this little piece here. Just like that. All right, so there's that. So again, remember, you don't really have to worry about the dress. If you're afraid a little bit of it's going to peek through, you can certainly just add some pink to it, just so you kind of know where you want to stick it, maybe on the edge. And I'm just doing that just for, you could do it green, honestly. It really wouldn't make much bit of a difference. So then I'm going to start with the light So Saffron. Just add that kind of all over. Then I'm going to add in a little bit of the dark. Just kind of for some depth of color. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of light crumb cake in a couple spots. Really gives like a nice overall tonal change. Most important thing here is you do really, I just missed a little bit of the face here. You want to make sure this is dry, because if this ink is not dry, it will smudge and then everybody's going to look like they have bruises. So you don't want to do that. So now I'm going to add a little bit of Calypso Coral in for a couple of the flower spots. Might as well, while we're at it, add just a little bit of yellow. And then last but not least, I'll bring in that Flirty Flamingo. Kind of just make sure you don't have any white spots with the flowers. And then again, you can also go in if you need to and just nip a little piece off so it looks a little bit rounder if you notice that you missed anything. But I think that looks pretty good. And I'm actually going to add just a teeny bit of shading with the bronze. Okay, so there we have her. So she's all colored in. Again, you can change any of the components of the person that you'd like. And then what we're going to do is now we're going to layer this together. Okay, so she's going to have this beautiful floral dress. So I can see right here I have a little piece that's not really going to match. So I'm going to trim this hump off. We don't really need that piece anyway. And I'm going to trim off this part right here because the way I trimmed the dress must have got a little crazy there. So we're going to make sure this all covers up nicely. I'm going to get a little bit more in here. And really, as long as you have something for it to adhere to, that's pretty much the main. You don't really even need the bottom of this dress, quite honestly, but I just did it so we could see there were spots that we're missing. So then what we're going to do is just layer this on top. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my liquid glue, and the reason I'm going to use this is because it gives you that mobility. If you mess something up, you are able to move it around a little bit. So I did put a lot of glue there, but what I want to do is I want to push it down because I do want to spread it out, make sure that we get all the little spaces in case we need to adjust anything. And then I'm going to just take this piece and kind of set it on top, and you can see it floats around really nicely, so that's good. So there is her beautiful dress. So you can see underneath how it's lined up pretty well. She can also have a key dress if she'd like on the other side. I'm going to nip just this little teeny piece off here, just so that doesn't show. Okay, so there is that with her beautiful floral gown. I don't know how many how many brides would choose a gown that is that floral, but you never know. It's definitely very pretty. So then we're going to take this out and just decide how we're going to layer it. So what we can either do is we can either put this here and kind of put this behind. I think I'm going to trim this up just for now. I'm going to take this piece off and see where we're going to put her, because we could always make this really go fully to the bottom. So it's like it's flowing into the end of the card, or we can bring her up a little bit and kind of give it a scallop. I think I'm going to give it a scallop, so I'm just going to freehand here. Just like that. And if you felt like you needed to, you could absolutely go along just to follow the outlines. And you could follow the outline of this so it looks like it's one long cohesive stamp. And then do the bottom. Oops, that was a little edge there that she probably didn't want in her dress. But that looks, I mean, that looks very pretty. This one, honestly, you really won't notice. So, make sure my fingers are clean. So what we'll do is we can put her here and put this on top, or you can put this on top. I think I'm going to put her back here, and then we'll put this on top of it so it kind of masks a little bit of it. And again, you can completely eliminate this. So if you don't like this piece, that's fine. You can also make this so it completely goes into the bottom. That way you can't really tell the difference of where the gown ends coming off of the card. So I'm going to put her up just a little. And that's going to be approximately where I want her. Let me move this over just a smidge. So I just want it to stay on the paper. So I'm going to put this here. Just a little bit for the head, so I kind of know where I want to go there, and then I'll just put a little bit of glue kind of down here. Nice part about the Tombow is it does allow you to adjust, so if you don't like where you put something, you can kind of always fix it, so that's super. There we go. I think that looks pretty nice. Okay, then what we can do is we can lay this piece over top. And what you're going to want to do with this is you're going to want to have your silicone mat. You can do this one of two ways. You can either grab a sponge and you could make a pile of this and kind of sponge it all over. I'm going to just, since I have my nice tipsy, which helps me keep the glue at the end where I want it, I'm just kind of dotting this randomly over top. I do want to make sure I get the bottom. Get all these little pieces that stick out a little bit. That up there. And in case you haven't seen the tipsy, My friend Lisa, her and her husband create these. They're really cool. I'm just going to spread this with my finger a little bit. What it does is it keeps your Tombow, so the thin side is full of glue, and you don't always have to bang it all over the place to get it to work. So it's a super tool. It is a something that they custom make. You can pick your color. They have lots of other amazing tools as well. Kind of looks like she's behind a trellis here. I like that. I'll slide this down just a smidge. She's behind the arbor for her picture. But they make lots of tools. You can pick the color you want. This one is in Tombow green, which is pretty cool, but they have all different kinds. I have red and like a Tiffany kind of blue, which is really pretty. So here is the base of our card. So we have that. So now I just want to add some sort of a sentiment. So just give me one sec. I just want to wipe off my fingers. So again, that was the Springtime Impressions, was this beautiful flower sentiment here, or flower die, and then we also have a really nice butterfly with it. So what you could do with this is you could do dream come true and just put this on a little circle here. Happy birthday, celebrating a special day with a special wish for a special person, future filled with happiness. I think they're absolutely, there's so many nice ones. Even for the bride, she said, yes, this would be a great card if you were making it like ahead of time. And then she might think, oh my gosh, who would have ever thought of a flowered dress? So I think I am going to go with that. I'm going to go with, if I can find it here, for the bride, because I think that's adorable. And then I'm going to just add these little tiny dots that come with it just to make the sentiment pop. So I just have a little scrap. So I'm just going to do this just on a nice little circle, make it kind of understated so the rest of the card shines. So I'm going to use a very pale color for the dots, and then I think I'm going to go with a gray for the bride, just so again, so it doesn't distract from the rest of the card. So I'm going to go with Seaside Spray because that is a pretty light color. So what I'm going to do is just Seaside Spray very lightly. I'm just going to tap that off onto my scrap, kind of randomly. There you go. That's good enough. I don't want to do overkill. And then I will go with Basic Gray for my sentiment. And if I was doing a really good job, except I knocked it off the table, I would use my paper piercing mat, because that really makes your photopolymer images come out really, really nice. But that turned out pretty well considering. So I'm going to leave this over here, and then all I want to do is, you could either do this with like a stitched circle, but I'm just going to grab a small punch just to make it simple. So I'm pretty sure this should fit in the 1 1/4 inch punch. Yep, just nice and simple, understated. Don't want anything crazy, that way it doesn't distract from the rest of it for the bride. One thing I am going to do just to bring just a little bit of depth to the edge of this is I'm going to just take my sponge dauber really lightly and just sponge the edges of this with the same Seaside Spray. And unfortunately, I'm guessing I must not have cleaned this very well because it's also showing up a little bit green, but that's okay. Hopefully our bride won't mind. And quite honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, I don't really have a wedding to go to or a card to give this to, so who knows if anyone actually will get this card. By the time they will, maybe they will really like green. I'm just going to put that here. Just like that. And it's such a simple card. Again, you could do any designer series paper that you like with this. Beautiful card. Really, really understated. I love the white on white. I think it looks really nice. If you want your gown to stand up more, you could obviously put this behind it. You could even eliminate some of it if you'd like. Oops, got a little piece from here I did not want. And then you could put the gown in front of it. But again, stay tuned because I will show you another really cool video using a mirror image stamp, again, from the Wonderful Moment. So another one that you can maybe share with your friend or your sister, your best friend, the person that you tell absolutely everything to, and they hope they never tell on you. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this card, I would love for you to give me a thumbs up. You can absolutely leave a comment as well if you have any questions. You can always find me here on Instagram. You can find me here on YouTube. You can find me on Pinterest. You can find me on Facebook. And you can also find me on my blog, which is Rachthestamper.com. Also, if you would like to get any of these supplies and more to make this card, it's a beautiful card to create, very versatile, and I love all the sentiments in it. You can visit my online store, rachthestamper.stampinup.net, 24/7, so you can shop anywhere if you are in the United States. I would love for you to leave me a comment. So thank you guys so much for watching.